conversation. Be sure to reach out to the boys on Twitter at the Recipe Boys, boys being spelled B-O-Y-Z, and check this episode's description for more information. Now pour yourself a drink, and cheers to you for listening.
Holy shit, we're rolling.
We are rolling. Guys, it's close to Halloween. Welcome back to the Recipe Boys, a podcast about cocktails and
Spooky stuff.
spooky stuff this week, especially.
Wait, will it be Halloween when we put this up?
It might be.
Halloween's next week, right?
Next Thursday?
Well, Halloween's today. I'm sorry, I misspoke.
Everyone, welcome back to the Recipe Boys. As always, I'm Max. Around the room, we got Lex and Taylor and another guest.
Yes. Do
Is
you want
that
to
me?
introduce yourself?
Is that me?
That's you,
I'm
yeah.
the guest. Good movie, by the way, The Guest.
Yeah.
There we go. How's it going, everyone?
Mystery guest. Tell us your name.
Rob Letterer. I am the guest today.
Who are you going to call?
Rob
man,
Letterer.
you want to drink this drink.
You did call me, and I
Yeah.
answered.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He definitely answered the call because he put us up. He sponsored dinner and he prepared a drink for us.
Yes, which we're very excited to drink, by the way.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell us about the drink?
I would love to tell you about the drink. So the drink, which I know very little about, but including what it tastes like, because I did not do a trial run on this, is a pumpkin bourbon smash. Or it might be a bourbon pumpkin smash.
I think it's up for...
It's a smash. I know
Yeah,
that.
it's
It's definitely a smash.
It was a monster mash.
It's a monster smash.
A monster smash, yeah.
Great. Beautiful. I want to drink it.
Okay.
Let's
I
talk
wanna
about
drink
it
it too.
after we drink it.
All right, yeah.
It smells so good.
Cheers.
Cheers, guys. Yeah, that don't hurt.
Oh, that's nice.
I taste a hint of smash.
I love the fact that this was sight unseen. We had no idea what this would turn out like.
We may die in 15 seconds.
Oh, that's true too. Yeah.
No, it's just 2 ounces of bourbon a guy.
Yeah, but maybe there's some weird concoction with nutmeg and
Pumpkin gets you
and
drunk.
pumpkin gets you and kills you.
At midnight, we all become pumpkins.
Oh,
Anyone allergic to cyanide?
no.
Ricin.
Depends on how much.
Cyanide. Like we'd run out.
So I have an admission. I wanted to make a pumpkin spiced old fashioned. And I know you guys did old fashions last week, right? Yeah. So I could not do that to you guys.
Actually, we could still do that as our second drink. You have everything we need to make an old... You have bitters, right?
Yeah, I have
Yes.
plenty of bitters.
We could just make this syrup old-fashioned. Get rid of the simple syrup and just use that instead.
Well, there we go.
Okay, well that worked
We
out
did it on
really
the
well.
air. You heard it here. This is the process.
Also, if our listeners are interested in making this drink themselves, you can check the description of this episode or hop over to Instagram and Twitter to find the post about this episode. There's a picture associated with it too, and you can follow the recipe for the drink. Super simple. Cool. So Rob, tell us a bit about yourself. We know who you are, but our audience doesn't.
I don't even know who I am, so I'm impressed with you guys. I am I'm a partner at a consulting firm by day. I am a screenwriter by night, and evenings, I don't know what the hell I am. But
You don't often
Father.
see that. That's true.
but that is my day job, which is less interesting than what I want to be in 1 to 5, 10 years, which is a screenwriter. I've written a comedy movie, which is trying to get made now for the last few years, but my passion is horror. And that's
Really?
What a perfect
I
timing.
couldn't have told by the big Scream statue in the room.
Yes, just for our audience, there is a life-size Scream statue, I
See
guess.
the ghoul?
Yeah.
What's his name?
I came with the house.
The ghost.
Oh, came with the house.
Yep.
Great.
Here when I got here.
Phenomenal.
And it's terrifying. Every time I look over at it, I forget that it's there, and it is a knife directly to my back.
My
So
children
that's
have not
fantastic.
slept since they saw that thing. So I feel sort of bad about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's all these little dolls everywhere. You got Freddy Krueger. You got Mike Myers. You have another Scream. You have...
But it's juxtaposed with all of like the, Olivia, the pig that can do everything, and all sorts of very adorable, cute young person stuff. And
Yeah.
That stuff can be horrifying too, trust me.
yeah.
So that's a really interesting question. Not to make this podcast all about you, but how does someone who's a partner at a consultancy in Manhattan decide to just want to be a screenwriter? Did one come before the other?
Oh, the movie part came way before the consultancy stuff. I think the consultancy stuff came after I graduated college and I realized I needed a job to make money, and I didn't know what I wanted to be. So someone said, "Hey, consulting's great for that." So that's how I ended up in that career path. Screenwriting, movie making, that started in probably middle school. I actually was writing with the same writing partner that I have today that I wrote this comedy with. We used to write together. We were best friends growing up. He's in LA now. He writes for TV. And that was always the passion, though. Grew up watching movies, wanted to make movies.
What was the earliest thing you remember writing?
I remember the title of the earliest thing.
Wow.
It was a slasher movie inspired by Scream, because that was the movie that actually made me realize I wanted to write movies.
That was my next question.
Yeah, Kevin Williamson was the inspiration that was like, this would be really cool to make a movie this cool. So we wrote a movie called Homicidal Tendencies, which was, if you read it, I think it was handwritten. This was before we like owned a computer or had a final draft. It was a total ripoff of Scream. Just a bunch of teenagers hanging out for a party. It was basically the last 40 minutes of Scream as a movie.
As if Scream itself was not a bit of a ripoff of every other horror movie that came before it. But
Don't talk bad about Scream.
I can tell, like, thematically, maybe you like Scream a little bit.
I mean, you got to think the Scream with like Jason and Freddy Krueger, his face is just as iconic as they are now.
But I think that actually with Scream, to its defense, is it's more of like an homage, because like that's the idea, is that he watches all of these horror movies and that's what inspires him. So he's like this collection of all of them. So in that sense, it's really kind of creative.
Yeah, it was the first horror movie where the characters in the horror movie watched horror movies. It's such a simple concept, but it just completely revived the genre.
Right. That big reveal when he reveals that he's one of the two guys, and he quotes Psycho.
Right.
He goes, we all go a little mad sometimes. It was like, that's really good.
Yeah,
I love Psycho. I didn't know that we could talk about Psycho.
We can talk about any horror movie. Isn't that great?
I don't really know much
I'm
about
so
horror.
excited.
I'm going to say it in the beginning because I'm going to ask Rob a lot of dumb questions. My entire knowledge of Scream, I've been nodding politely, has been not just the scary movie franchise, because that's what I see when I look at this guy's face, but also the scene in Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back where Wes Craven's directing a Scream where it's a monkey under the mask, and he's like, "What? People love monkeys." And that's a great gag. That's
That
it.
is pretty good.
Your knowledge of horror movies equals my knowledge of cocktails going into this night.
We're gonna be great friends after this.
See that? Cheers.
Cheers.
Yeah, I feel like it's great that we got our Kevin Smith reference out already. This is the fastest one yet, I think.
We love this monkey.
Yeah.
I thought we were
about
going to have to talk
Dogma again?
about Tusk before we got to Kevin Smith.
Oh, that's where I dropped off with him. I don't want to watch something scary. I'm afraid of it.
Yeah, I love that about you a little bit. I think that that's kind of a cool, like, you don't meet many adults who are just like completely on board with the fact that like, I can't do that.
I don't enjoy it. I don't enjoy being scared. It's like I don't enjoy crystal meth. I don't need to try it to know I won't enjoy it.
Some people don't like spicy foods.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Just like, hey,
But they work their way in eventually, and they start liking it more.
Oh, yeah. Now I like spicy
We call
foods.
them babies. Everyone should like spicy
Well,
foods.
but because you don't like horror movies, it kind of proves my point that horror movies stand out on their own.
Well, good-
in any genre.
Good horror movies to me kind of are more thrillers. They tend to be more thriller. But there are some great horror movies. Like, we'll talk about it in the next segment. But remind me, but like I'm thinking like the Cloverfield, not the Cloverfield franchise, but 10 Cloverfield Lane was a great kind of skirted the line between horror and sci-fi. Psycho's great. Hitchcock is great, like all of his stuff. But modern horror terrifies me.
I'm going to get you to watch like at least one horror movie you never saw or heard of after this.
Yeah, but you're not going to get me to watch like Annabelle. It's not going to happen.
The Descent.
Annabelle's all right.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
and we can talk about this now. We can talk about this later. But I think that there's a huge difference between getting startled and being scared. And a good horror movie scares you. It doesn't, just like do jump scares the entire time, which is, I think, been predominantly what you get in the horror movie genre for the last few years.
Ooh, this is educational. I like this.
Horror's been very watered down. Although there's been a recent revival, I feel like, with like The Conjuring and the James Wan movies. But you're right. There's been this like stretch of just like, oh, every 10 minutes we'll have something pop out in a large musical chord, and that's horror.
Did you watch
Yes.
The Haunting of Hill House on Netflix?
Yes, great.
So incredibly good because it's basically just like this long, suspenseful family drama with like spooky shit added in.
I didn't
And
like
it's
where it
amazing.
went. It like in the final few episodes it became like a melodrama, but
Yeah.
the first whatever it was 6 episodes, it was just one horror movie after another. It was
I know
great.
it's incredible.
No, it was haunted. It was great.
But my favorite part was, I mean, I think that like to me, like the pinnacle of that episode was, or that show was the one shot that they did where they went back and forth through time, but it was one continuous shot.
Showing you what she saw the whole time.
Incredible.
That was incredible.
Incredible.
That twist was incredible, but it kind of made me not like the whole show.
Oh yeah, it took you out of it.
Because they were following like a predetermined destiny in the show, and it kind of screwed it up.
Is this
for me.
the bent neck lady episode?
Is that? Are you sure that's the same one?
Haunting of Hill House?
Yeah, Haunting of Hill House, but no, it's the episode with the one continuous shot. I don't think that that's the same one that she finds out about. The
That's when they're in the house as the kids and they're running.
It's the one where it's filmed.
You mean physically one continuous Steadicam shot? Yeah, okay, that was a beautiful cinematography.
Yeah, incredible. It did take me out of it. That's the one where they're at the funeral parlor, but then they go back. They do cutbacks, but it's the same actors going through these two scenes.
Now I know what you're talking about.
But that does kind of take me out of it a little bit because I'm just watching.
I was talking about
the
from a plot point with the broke neck lady.
Yeah, that
where
she was doomed to do it.
Amazing idea, but she was doomed all along, and it kind of ruined it for me.
Yeah,
there's no way to get away from this.
Best single long shot in a movie?
Best single long shot in a movie.
I like the scene.
Horror specific?
No, not horror.
I like the scene in Jaws when they get on the ferry and he's arguing with the mayor about closing the beach for 4th of July.
Fucking A, that's a good one. Yeah, it's real good.
Because they actually never cut from the second they get on the ferry till when they dock it back. The whole conversation moves around the entire ferry, gives you like really great 360.
Well, if you want to talk about the longest shot, Birdman's pretty good.
Except it's fake.
Whole movie.
It's the whole movie. Yeah.
Well,
it's one shot.
Back to horror. Opening of Halloween is amazing. Steadicam shot in the eyes of Michael Myers.
Oh,
we really
yeah.
need to kick off the education of horror movies here.
Well, it's just been a while since I saw the original Halloween, but I don't know. You know what it was is that for me, like Supernatural was such a big thing for my horror movies when I was younger and watching these things that Michael Myers to me was just like, why don't you guys just shoot the dude? Like it's a guy. That's the thing that like separated me.
They shot him 9 times.
He is just a guy? He's just a guy?
He's just a regular. I mean, he's a really messed up guy, but
Yeah, but
he's a guy.
He's lived in like 9 movies and he's never died.
He becomes a zombie at some point.
He does?
Effectively, they shoot him 8 times and then they burn him and then they chop his head off. I mean, they kill him many different ways. And he
But
comes
then
back.
how does he come back? Plot?
Magic.
Because they need to make more money.
Studios need more
The
money.
search for more money.
Children of Men, though.
That's a great one.
That's an incredible shot.
That shot.
Which one? Wait,
The-
there's 2 of them. There's 3 of them actually.
There's a lot of them. You're right. I'm talking about where they're in the car trying to escape.
Oh yeah.
And they get attacked by all the people coming from the sides. And
that's a good one.
Then they back up and get shot at.
Uh-huh.
And Julian
I was
Moore
thinking the
gets
one
shot.
where I don't remember a car, but it's in like a battle zone and he's just like trying to avoid people.
That's
and running
the
for
last. That's the last.
Is that the
scene.
last one?
Yeah,
It's so good.
it's the last one.
Great movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, great movie. Depressing, but great.
But I was gonna say horror of a different genre, I think there, and that's one of the cool things I love about the horror genre is that it's not specifically just one thing; it's tons of different concepts.
But wait, would you guys say that horror is better when it incorporates other genres elements and then just adds a horror to it?
I don't know if you can have a pure horror movie by itself. I think it always has some other aspect to it,
Like comedy or drama.
So-
drama. It's like you can't.
So
just,
we've talked about before, like the summer superhero blockbuster that takes the box office. Like I always see like superhero movies being able to overshadow all other genres except horror. Because in my opinion, horror kind of stands out on its own.
Yeah.
It's one emotion that you get that it's like why is everybody afraid of spiders? You know, why does a spider freak people out?
because there's
But at the
giant
same time-
spiders in the past.
But yeah, but at the same time,
That's
it's like
funny.
like you know like
Callback.
Like there's a lot of emotions that normally happen in movies, like feel good movies, happiness that happens in superhero movies. Happiness happens in superhero movies. A feel good moment with Captain America and some like other friend or something that happens in other regular movies. But what it never happens is horror. It never happens in those movies.
Wait,
And the feeling of being afraid only happens in this one genre.
that's not true. Good movies that are not horror movies can still make you afraid.
Define afraid.
Like literally scared as if you're in the film. As if what's happening in the film is happening to you.
yeah, I mean,
And if you look at your shirt, That's a horror movie right there.
I almost think that
Max
horror.
is wearing a Venom shirt, by the way.
I didn't think Venom was scary at all in any.
I know, but that's because
form.
the studio cut him off at the legs.
Wasn't good either.
What?
Wasn't good
It was
either.
awful. Oh my god, it's so bad.
But-
Sorry.
so
but
bad.
you
Hey,
need
they're
to-
making another
You
one.
need to pick an example that proves your point. Not
I'll
one
pick a
that
movie
doesn't.
that is scary.
That's not a horror movie.
I was going to say, here's my feeling though, is that horror to me is kind of like spicy, in the sense that it's like spicy isn't a type of food, but it is in a lot of different cuisines, and so a
It's
lot
an
of
element
different
of food.
Right, it's not a different genre necessarily.
Yeah.
but it is something that's added.
It's
on
like you have
top of other
spicy Italian, you
things.
have spicy Chinese, you have spicy this, but it's not dominant in the genre. It's a subset of the genre.
Yeah, and it can be. And like I said a minute ago, it's just like
get
I don't
that.
think there's pure horror out there, but it's like someone's probably gonna. I mean, of our two listeners are gonna be like, okay, yes, this is a movie that's purely horror, and you're not talking about that.
I can think of two great examples of clearly non-horror movies that, in my opinion, have two of the scariest scenes in any movie ever.
We pick them.
Mulholland Drive,
Okay.
the scene when the guy's telling the story in the diner about going behind the diner and how there's a guy back there behind the dumpster. And it's this like great, long, drawn out, suspenseful scene with like jump out of your skin ending, which I won't ruin if you haven't seen it. But it is a scary scene. The other one is Enemy. Has anyone seen that?
No.
With Jake Gyllenhaal?
No.
Lesser known movie directed by Denis Villeneuve, who directed a new
Of
Blade
course.
Runner. Yeah,
Yep.
it's like
And he's
awesome.
gonna direct Dune,
Yeah,
which
he's
I
like
talk about all the time.
He's great.
Yeah, he's
So this was like the movie that
Arrival.
no one saw that he made, Arrival. And the ending of that movie, which is a total holy shit moment. It's also a like what the fuck moment. Like it makes no sense, but it is a jump out of your skin ending that you do not see coming, and it is frightening. And I
Yeah.
still think about it.
Trying to think. I just thought of a superhero movie that's terrifying to me.
Yeah, quick question. Mulholland Drive, that's David Lynch,
Lynch.
right?
Yeah.
Well, because he's weird and
Sure.
he's gonna
Yes.
make you uncomfortable,
That's
and
not
that's gonna make you
surprising.
scared. Yeah.
Did anyone here besides me and Max see Shazam?
No,
I did.
he did.
It was terrifying, absolutely terrifying. And I say this because one, I'm a pussy, and two, because I sat next to this beautiful little, delicate, precious moments Chinese girl who sat next to me, and she was screaming the entire movie. She was terrified.
Well, I think for Shazam, to me it wasn't a scary movie, but they marketed it as one of those typical superhero movies that kids are going to want to go see, and it's very gruesome and like crazy shit happens.
It had some Indiana Jones type stuff where it's like the scene where the woman grabs the door and she turns into a skeleton and turns into dust and she screams and the sound is super loud.
She's
this
dead.
little girl screams so loud. And then the scene with the 7 deadly sins ripping apart the boardroom, which was shot like a horror scene, even with through the glass, the smeared glass with blood, and like all the way they were demons. They were designed to be demons.
They bite the head off of a guy.
Oh my god! And it was horrifying. And it
There's
didn't.
a 5-year-old sitting in this theater.
It was relentless how much they did that. The car crash in the beginning. And then I go and look up on IMDb, David F. Sandberg, his last 4 movies were horror movies.
I love that.
So this proves your point about the spicy.
Yeah.
And it also just made me realize a lot of great classic childhood films that we all love have that one scary scene. Tim Burton's a classic at it. The Indiana Jones franchise has it.
Never ending story.
Never Ending Stories
Oh,
got
yeah,
one.
that was a scary
Oh my
movie.
god! In any Indiana
Jurassic Park.
Jurassic Park is kind of a horror movie, but like you have Indiana Jones, you have Ghostbusters. Obviously, we talked about. There was one more that was on the tip of my tongue. That's like just so
what's
scary.
what's the Ghostbusters scene?
Ghostbusters terrified me as a kid.
A lot of scenes.
Oh, you know what? Okay, you know what it was in the beginning of the movie
Yes.
with in the library.
library.
You're right, and she
The
gets
taxi
scary.
cab driver used to terrify the shit out of me.
See, but that was very subtle, so it didn't bother me as much. It
I know you're
it
talking
was the jumpy part. Of
I mean, I was 5. I didn't want to see any of
Yeah.
that. But also, like, trying to think, there was another.
The arms coming out of the armchair and grabbing Sigourney Weaver.
Oh my
right.
God.
Oh,
That
yeah.
still scares me.
I always
Gremlins.
thought that it was a nice touch that they were different arms. That they were like not all one kind of creature. Like one was hairy, one was scaly. It was like
Because it was
different
actual
things.
arms of people.
Yeah, it was just the set.
Practical effects.
the
If there was
crew,
CGI.
right?
But they designed that in advance. There was supposed to be a frog suction cuppy one, and they got rid of it.
Oh yeah, it was a little too goofy.
I thought it was too silly. But no, so I was saying like Tim Burton, like Pee-wee's Big Adventure has a scary scene in it. Beetlejuice is obviously very scary. Horror is an element there. But there was a movie I was thinking about.
Pee Wee Herman's a really good call also. Yeah,
Pee Wee Herman's a great one, for example. But you have the Indiana Jones franchise. But there's another franchise that has a scary scene, like a horrifying scene.
Poltergeist, but
Poltergeist.
meant to be scary.
Actually, I was going to bring up Poltergeist before when you guys said that there's no movie that's true horror. Poltergeist is true horror. There's nothing else in that movie besides horror.
It's a family drama.
Yeah, but nothing is solved by the action, so it doesn't make it a drama. There's no arc.
in it.
Coach is in it. Exactly.
There's
Coach is in it.
There's no arc.
I mean, I don't know. Like family dramas for me are family dramas, but like there's plenty of family dramas without scary scenes.
Yeah, family drama is already scary as it is. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I'm just saying.
Yeah, I'm not sure I agree with the statement. I've seen a lot of movies that are only intended to mess you up.
Well, so it's an example of one that's like, because I can imagine like an art house movie that's just sort of like, like an hour of like someone stabbing.
But
animals
no,
or something like that.
but you're just saying that horror is only when a scene happens when somebody is, in this case, getting stabbed.
I wouldn't say that I've got a fully fleshed out theory here, guys.
Yeah,
So,
it's like
I would say this is something I came up with between our bourbon and bourbon drinks.
That one actor, he plays in horror movies all the time. Or like there's that new movie called The Grass or something on Netflix.
Which apparently looks pretty good.
I watched it. It is good.
Oh, okay.
It is pretty good. And it's just a scary movie.
Man,
That's all it
Netflix is really throwing stuff at the wall. Just trying to get.
They're just getting ahead of Disney Plus, which is going to sponsor our segment for the next.
I'll recommend French horror movies of the last 10 years. Clearly only intended to mess you up.
Oh yeah.
So 3 of them are High Tension.
Yeah.
You seen it?
Yeah, or I mean, it's a classic.
Yeah, classic, bloody, great twist at the end, so it works on another level.
And you know what? Everyone hates the twist, and I love the twist.
I love the twist,
I
too.
love the twist because like you can just accept that it's an unreliable narrator, and everyone's like, no, it contradicts the earlier parts of the movie.
People were fine with that in Usual Suspects.
I don't get it.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense. If you watch The Usual Suspects, it does not make sense.
But the thing is,
That's
it's
the point.
narrated.
No, but I'm saying like, I love a good twist, but it has to be something like if you watch like Now You See Me with Mark Ruffalo. You guys seen Now You See Me?
Yeah.
Yep.
Mark Ruffalo is the bad guy or the good guy or whatever you want to think. It's like he's the one who's meant to catch them. He wouldn't be so confused if he knew everything all the time. Doesn't make any sense.
See, but the thing is with Usual Suspects is that it's narrated. Like the entire thing is being told as a story. So those flashbacks never actually happen. It's from the storyteller's
Unreliable
point of
narrator.
view. Yeah, so it doesn't have to make sense.
He acted confused to throw them off.
Cool.
Right.
That's it.
Guess what? It's not that good. They're better movie twists.
12 Monkeys.
Never seen it.
Love the ending of 12 Monkeys. Psycho, since you brought it up, one of the greatest twists of all
Oh,
time.
it's a great twist.
Yep.
When it's literally a twist. He turns the chair around.
That was back in the day when people used to like faint in movies. Like it had
Yeah,
that
yeah,
level of
yeah,
effect.
yeah.
It was like,
Oh, where
people
the-
are fainting. What do we do?
You ever-
We have to warn them.
Like
You
The
ever-
Exorcist. Yeah.
You ever hear
exactly.
the
Like,
story?
couldn't take
The first film ever shown in theaters was also the first horror film.
It was just the train, the Great Train.
The
Robert?
Great Train.
Yeah.
The train drove towards the camera,
And people ran out
and
of the
people
theater.
ran out of the theater because they thought the train was going to hit them, like an idiot. What?
Like a bunch of
If you
idiots.
can listen to these people who are dead in the past, you're stupid. I don't tell you.
It's funny actually. Now that I think about it, some of the earliest version, like earliest things in cinema were horror. I think the first thing that was ever recorded was like Frankenstein. Nosferatu is like a classic, like silent film era, horror movie. So maybe people just figured scaring people at a young. I mean, it's that or pornography.
My grandma used to spin balls of yarn about a spectral locomotive that used to rocket past the farm where she grew up.
But I think you're right. I think horror movies, like since the advent of the camera, they were making horror movies. So let's just scare people.
Since
with
the
this.
advent of a campfire is the point I'm making.
Yeah.
Since there was a people gathered around a campfire, there was someone there to tell a scary story.
Yeah.
But here's the great thing about horror. So name a genre besides a Disney film, a Disney owned property now that is a guaranteed return on your investment. It's horror. It has to be horror now.
So what I want to ask you is I want to pick your brain more about this because I'm the layman and I can ask the dumb questions and the rest of them will just laugh at me.
We always do that.
If
That's
some
something,
like
yeah.
it's kind of like I want to get into like old school rap and hip hop. It's like where do I start? Start with Tupac. Start with Biggie. Go back in the day. Where do I go? Right? If I wanted to get into horror and I'm terrified at the thought of all of it. How do I get into it?
It's a good question. Wow.
Do you want
Do
to
I go to Romero? Do I go to,
That's what I was thinking. That was my initial thought, actually.
Talk to me.
Night of the Living Dead was my initial thought.
That's good. Definitely.
But it's also, I hate to say
It depends on
George
what-
Romero, I think he
Dude,
just
just-
died. May he rest in peace.
Just watch The Ring.
No. No. Don't do
No,
that.
that's
That
that is
wouldn't
a-
scare me.
That's jumping into the deep end there.
Yeah, but no, the ring
it's
wouldn't scare me.
PTSD.
I jumped into the deep end at like 12 then.
I know, but here's the thing: is that like you are
Just
a
go for
different
it, man.
a different person at this point. So there had to have been something that made you averse to doing horror movies at an earlier
Yeah,
point.
my cousins that are older than me locked me in a room with Gremlins 1 and Gremlins 2, and I was terrified.
The new batch.
Yeah, I love that movie. I mean, now I love it. Now I love Gremlins 2, but like I was terrified of those things. I used to have dreams where they were like under my bed. Oh, it's terrifying.
So well, I don't know where we go. If Gremlins is the thing that got you out of the genre, I'm not sure where to go to get you back in.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
That's trouble. Ghoulies.
It's like Critters, all the Gremlins knockoffs. Face your fear.
This is why I love Scream, though. Scream is such like an homage to the genre itself while functioning as a horror movie.
Then maybe, you know what? Maybe I watched Scream because that's how I got into it action.
But you already were
Yeah, what I'm saying
ruined
is
by
that
scary movie.
Just watch like Get Out or something.
yeah, but
I would
I
say
love to get out.
here's-
I love to get
I've
out.
got
That's a
I've got an
thriller.
option here. What if you did watch like Friday the 13th? Because the idea of like the scary man in that as an adult would probably seem a bit ridiculous to the point where it might like undo the conditioning that you've done already.
I feel like all
Will you
horror
be
movies
like-
are going to seem ridiculous to me. That's why I don't enjoy them.
yeah, but this one's gonna seem real, but it also like campy and good and like fun to watch.
So I enjoyed Poltergeist. I like the Hitchcock.
Poltergeist is still fucking scary.
I like the
though.
Hitchcock movies. My problem with Poltergeist is that whenever the dad talks, I'm like, oh, it's Mr. Incredible.
Oh yeah. See, I think Coach.
Do
Coach,
something
yeah.
amazing.
I would also go Halloween. Have you seen Halloween?
No.
So that's-
I like the song.
The great thing about Halloween is it is like no movie
Slutty
before
costumes.
that.
Slutty costumes is the best part
Oh,
of
yeah.
Halloween.
Well, the holiday of Halloween, sure. The movie of Halloween, the great thing is like that literally, it's still getting imitated today. Like, what is it, 50 years later? 40 years? Whatever.
What's getting imitated?
It's been a long time.
Halloween? It's
Halloween's a
like
movie.
the idea of like guy in a mask stalking babysitters.
Yeah.
That defined that.
Oh, that was a creation.
And it created the concept of the last girl, which is like a thing throughout horror.
Did you see
movies
the
now.
new Halloween movie?
You're talking the post Rob Zombie one, the one that just came out?
Yeah.
Yes.
Did you like it?
I liked it, didn't love it.
I heard good reviews.
Yeah.
But I didn't know.
That's interesting.
Who would let a guy into like a prison hospital and taunt him like that?
Yeah, like to hold the mask in front of him to be
I'd be
like,
like, sir, please,
Yeah.
you're disrupting our people.
you really can't do
What
that.
a jerk.
You know what I don't understand is like, do you think like most horror movies when they get good, like when they get like that kind of crazy reaction that's competitive, they turn them into a franchise?
That's everything though.
No, I'd be like some things like some of these movies because I haven't seen them seem to me to be ridiculous because it's like, oh, that would have been a great one-off story, and they went and made 20 of them.
It's a great question. Best horror movie ever that never had a sequel.
It Follows.
Yes.
Yeah.
Great answer.
Because the end of it is so primed for the idea that's like, but what happens next? Like, I must know what continues to happen. Like,
What's
you kind of have an idea, but
Like the Babadook or something as well.
yeah.
Yeah.
There's no sequel to that?
No. That might be the answer to what horror movie should you watch. It Follows. Great.
That's okay. So I wanted to do
Throwback.
that.
It's so simple.
But it is based on a lot of tropes of 80s horror movies.
Yeah.
If you haven't
Which
seen
I
them
love.
yet,
I
might
love
not.
callbacks to tropes.
But okay, well, hey, give it a shot. It's really good because it's not a jump scare movie. It's intense, kind of like
Atmospheric.
atmospheric.
Let me
like-
give you a metaphor. I saw Indiana Jones around the same time that I saw Stephen Sommers' The Mummy with Brendan Fraser. Obviously, one was trying to piggyback off the tropes of another 2 decades prior. But to me, my brain just said, this is a genre. And I put it together and I earned respect for that genre. Right? Because I saw the legacy involved in it. I want to try to do that with horror. Where it's like, if I can find something old that I like, if I find something new that I like it now.
Watch It Follow. Then you gotta watch it. It's so
What-
good.
What's something classic that I could watch?
Frankenstein.
Really?
Frankenstein's actually really good.
have you seen Psycho?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. I like Hitchcock a lot.
Okay. I'm just asking.
But I don't really get scared of that stuff.
Well, no, because
The
like
Birds was scary when I saw it as a kid.
Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
I don't want to watch Rednecks.
The Hills Have Eyes. Wrong Turn.
Good movie.
Oh, God. We're telling our listeners our secret sauce. Get them all the details.
So cocktail number 2, pumpkin spice. It's pumpkin spice, right?
Rob, tell us what it is.
I was just standing near you. I have no idea.
Yeah, why don't you tell us?
It's
You were the one who made
it's
it.
a pumpkin spice old fashioned that I used making Rob's pumpkin spice syrup. Link in the description as the simple syrup. And I used his rim. And it's just the same bourbon we had before, Buffalo Trace, with an expressed lime, lime. What do you call it? Like lime.
Zest?
Zest, yeah.
What would you call it?
Peel?
Lime peel. Yes, that's
There we
the
go.
word.
Oh.
And a maraschino cherry.
Oh.
I am merely the
Cheers.
supply chain.
Maraschino cherries.
Sounds amazing.
I think this is a great segue.
I do have Death Star ice cube balls, by the way.
Oh.
Should have
that
mentioned
really
that
would have been more
when we were
appropriate.
making cocktails.
Don't get me started on ice, because I'll talk about ice.
Well, Rob, it was really nice having you on here. So why don't you get the hell out?
Dude, this is good. Can we just talk about this?
Yeah, definitely.
It's like literally tastes like pumpkin pie crust.
It's similar to the last drink, but it gets more to the point, I think.
It's a little more boozy for
A
sure.
little boozier.
Well, it's an old
Yeah,
fashioned.
agreed.
Yeah.
Less bubble.
Yeah.
I can't believe I'm a pumpkin spice latte guy. We have a cousins group chat, and I'm the one they make fun of for being really basic and
You
in the
don't,
pumpkin.
I like pumpkin spice lattes.
But even that, like I wouldn't think that I'd be able to have 2 of these things and really like it. And honestly, I could definitely crush a few more of these.
I
no
could
problem.
have 3 or 4 of these, honestly, if they were serving at a restaurant and we're all having this conversation at a booth. Mm-hmm. I love pumpkin pie. That's my favorite pie.
Wake up on your couch again,
Oh, yeah. Max, tell them that story.
where you got really drunk at your house and you just woke up on your own couch.
I
next
hosted
day.
the podcast and I got so drunk I didn't even I'm the one who didn't make it to bed.
Yeah.
Was it zombie episode or I made zombies after mojitos?
It was zombies. Yeah. And Lex at his own house woke up on his own couch.
Have you had a zombie before?
No.
They're deadly. They're death.
Yeah,
interested.
the true zombie?
The true
Oh,
zombie.
you'd fucking die.
They're
Come
really
come by
good.
my apartment after work one day.
Okay.
Yeah,
Not the
really.
first time I heard that.
You'll fucking die. No. If you have one, you're good. We had 3 in one night.
Yeah, that was really dumb.
And then we kept
Well,
drinking.
in each zombie, there's 4 ounces of rum. So,
Wow.
and not a lot of juice.
And one of those ounces is overproof rum, which is 82%.
I'm in.
yeah, it's a good drink.
Sign me up.
Actually, I wanted to, while we're on the topic of this syrup, I believe you have a story to tell about its creation.
Great. So, obviously, in anticipation of this monumental moment of being on the podcast, I had to create at least the ingredients for the drink. One of the ingredients was pumpkin simple syrup. They use the word simple very liberally, I've learned, since my 4-hour adventure.
How'd it
making
take you
this.
that long?
Well, I think a couple of things went wrong. Number one, I forgot I made it after it was boiling and cooling. So that was an hour and a half wasted. And then I had to strain it, and I only had like a 2-inch strainer.
Little tiny
So
strainer.
We had about, I don't know, like half a pot full of pumpkin puree and like a ton of sugar
Ooh.
going through a 2-inch strainer really slowly, like a fine strainer.
Yeah.
So I
Where'd you
was
get the
sitting there a
pumpkin
half
puree?
hour at a time.
Where'd you get the pumpkin puree?
The pumpkin store.
For real.
I think
Johnny's
the
Pumpkin
grocery
Patch,
store.
yeah.
Stop and shop.
Schmidt's Farm.
So if
That's
I
where
want to
you
make
go.
this, I can go get pumpkin puree anywhere.
Everything was readily available.
Yeah.
Do I need it? Can I only do this in the fall or can I do this anytime?
They got pumpkin puree probably, I don't know about year round. They might, but definitely Thanksgiving.
Definitely the second half of the year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No problem finding it.
Great. I want to make this.
So wait, what are the ingredients that went into this simple quote unquote?
It
syrup?
was, let's see what I can remember. It was pumpkin puree. It was more sugar than I've ever poured into a bowl before. That was kind of frightening. It was other sugar of a different color, brown sugar.
Demerara or brown?
No, there was brown and granulated in it. And then there were some spices in it, which I don't remember.
Was it the pumpkin pie
I think
spice?
the pumpkin pie spice, yeah.
Which is like cinnamon nutmeg.
And then you boiled
Ginger,
it.
yeah.
You cooled it after it boiled. You set it aside. You covered it. And then you had to strain it. And here's the other challenge. You had to strain it while it was hot. And it was taking me so long that it would cool down. Then I would throw it in the microwave to heat up, which I don't think you're supposed to do, but I did it. And then I'd strain it again. It was terrible.
You know, it's actually one of those funny things where you wonder if you tried to make it again and you did it perfectly, would it turn out as well as it is right now? Maybe the trick was you got to microwave it.
I don't know
a
because
dozen times.
I'll be honest. Normally, everything you said made me scared to use it now. But everything that I poured, the consistency was good. I'm the syrup guy on this episode on this podcast. You Oh, Max makes his raspberry syrup and his mint syrup.
Yeah, he's made tons of
I
syrup.
make whatever syrup is required for our show.
But
Yeah.
I used to make syrups like for years. I've been practicing. Like I like having a couple syrups in my fridge for
You have
whatever.
cola syrup now?
I do have cola syrup, so I'm gonna do rum and cokes with cola syrup and champagne instead of the soda. But no, what I was gonna say is that your consistency was great. The flavor's great. When you open the jar, you didn't even have the jar half full. You open the jar and the whole room smells like pumpkin.
Yeah.
That's a good sign.
I didn't get to the part where I threw out the syrup I made and then bought syrup at a store.
It's really good.
So we were talking about the evolution of horror, which I'm real excited about because I think it goes through past, present, and future. So where do we start? Do we go beginning or do we go Tarantino on it? Maybe start at the end?
I think we go. So what's interesting is the influence the Nazis had on horror.
What?
No, so this is true. This is
Okay.
you're like you didn't know this was going here.
Yes, please. I'm excited.
So
All right,
apparently,
what do we got?
I think the German film apparently
He went real Tarantino. He just brought the Nazis right into
Yeah,
it.
right.
into it central. So the
That was awesome. It's a Quentin Tarantino Easter egg.
Yeah.
The filmmaker from Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Dominic DeCoco.
good call.
No, he was in the Hollywood movie.
Oh, he was. Yeah.
Great call. So I think in Germany, horror movies were like booming, like Nosferatu, German horror movie. And then when Nazis started occupying all of Europe, they basically took German expressionism and they dialed it back and they stopped making all these German horror movies. And they actually started recruiting all these German cinematographers into Hollywood. And that's what actually spurred like the 1930s Universal monster movies that everybody knows. Dracula, Frankenstein, The Mummy, Wolfman. Those were all sort of the coalescence of German filmmakers coming to Hollywood to start to make monster movies.
I love that because I learned that in my film classes, but they took away the horror elements and took away the history of it. They just said that in the 1920s, 30s, the first time America started to pay attention to French and German expressionist films because their films were a little bit less literal. America's films were very plot focused and German and French films were very like emotional focused because they cared a lot more about cinematography and like the disparities of living in as different selves, like different characters. And they removed all of that. It's a really great thought to think that it had much more literal impact.
Yeah, it's true.
Because Frankenstein, even the looks of those movies seem very vaguely European. None of this stuff took place in America.
What was the we watched in film class? The Cabinet of Dr.
Caligari.
Yeah, that
That's
was
the one they always teach you about. In
that
film
was
school.
right.
I think it's a German horror movie too.
And I think I was gonna say because it was just like that was a wild.
They didn't describe it as horror. They said it was like German expressionist. I watched
Obviously horror.
I-
When we look back at it now, I feel like that's.
I saw that when I was 20 and feared nothing. So I thought it was very MTV.
It looked kind of like
MC
Smashing Pumpkins.
Yeah,
music video.
it looked like
You know?
MC Escher met like Aha.
But that was
Take
what
on
was
Me.
so crazy about it. Well, I think that they showed it to us as maybe it was mise en scene.
Mise en scene.
Mise en scene.
They wanted to show it as like an example of some right. All of those pronunciations, by the way, are 100% correct.
Just sound grumpy.
It's so wild.
Come on.
Talk like you have peanut butter on the roof of your mouth. It's great to know that the Germans brought their horror sensibilities to America. What happened next?
Well, what's great. What's fascinating about horror movies is there's always this political undertone. Like you can tie everything back to like what's going on in current events. So in the 50s, you had Cold War fear sort of driving everything. So you had all these movies about invasions and nuclear attacks and Attack of the 50-Foot Woman because she grew up near nuclear or whatever. But so I'm not sure about you guys. I don't love the old Gothic horror movies. They're fun. Sort of
What do you mean by that? The Universal classics?
Yeah, the
Creature from Black
Big
Lagoon?
Shadows and Dracula,
Bela
Frankenstein, the big
Lugosi.
monster movies, Bela Lugosi.
You don't love those?
I don't love those, no. I'm a modern day horror movie guy. I'm a post-Psycho, 1960 and forward.
So walk us through what that means.
So Psycho changed the game in horror because everything before that was like big Gothic castles and creature horror, right?
But you said the 50s had like nuclear and alien elements. What happened in the 60s that changed everything?
So the 60s when Psycho came out, it was like the villain in Psycho was an everyday guy, owned a hotel.
Can actually happen.
It was an actor who was like played a hunky, teenager in other movies before. People knew Anthony Perkins.
Anthony Perkins, yeah.
Yep. And it was like, exactly, it could happen to you because everyone goes to a hotel, but everyone doesn't go to a Transylvanian castle. So
Right.
it became like everyday horror.
And I think that they kind of like,
Ooh.
with the gothicness of that particular motel, like they skirted that line so people saw it and still recognized it as such, but it was just a motel.
Hitchcock did say he saw a building like it and took a photo of it and gave it to his production team because he thought there was something like old and new world in it. And he thought that the juxtaposition itself was scary. Makes me think of the line from 1408. I don't know if you've ever seen that, the Stephen King movie.
No.
It's 1408's with Cusack, John Cusack and Samuel L. Jackson, and he's in a haunted hotel room and he's speaking to himself on like a recorder, and he says there's something about hotels in themselves that are genuinely scary, and he talked about it and he explained why.
People probably died in that room.
Well, people die, people live their lives. It's a borrowed place,
Yeah.
and that's
It's
terrifying.
So the concept of that is called liminal spaces. It's places that you're not supposed to inhabit for too long. So like being at a gas station late at night because you're not supposed to be there for very long gives you like an eerie sense.
Well, I love
of like
this.
it's a transitionary place. It shouldn't be somewhere
I
that you
didn't
stay
know
for
that.
very long. Yeah,
That's-
it's
can you give
called
me another
liminal.
example?
Is it why we're afraid of spiders?
No, it's totally different. It's basically the concept that it's like places like rest stops, are the ones that come to my mind, but
A hallway, same thing.
hallway, yeah, exactly. Like a hallway
Walking downstairs.
Oh, actually, you don't think about.
stairwells, perfect.
I think
you're
about-
not supposed to inhabit that
I
place. You're
hang out in
supposed
rest
to go in
stops
and
all the
leave.
time.
Yeah, I think about. I think
Your
about when
mom's house. No.
I think about when I stay at a friend's house who I've never stayed at before, right? And I get up in the middle of the night and I'm the only one there. It's like I don't belong here. I'm not supposed to be here, and it gets me really creeped out because it's like, why am I in this space? This is not my space. And that feeling actually just went away a few months ago at my current apartment.
Oh yeah,
Interesting.
Yeah.
I get the
'Cause
reverse of that feeling when I'm in the bathroom. I'm like, this is where I should live.
this is it. Yeah,
It's comfortable.
I don't
It's
know,
got,
like-
it's got a seat.
Tonight at Taylor's place, I'll be in my underwear at the fridge, drinking milk from the carton.
They love you there. They really love you there. It's the exact opposite of Psycho when Max comes to visit. They love Max.
yeah.
They love them some Max.
They don't murder them.
at the Mason house. They love them some Max. They welcome some more.
Yeah. So Hitchcock was the ultimate showman when it came to movies. So there's a couple things he did. So he told theaters not to let anyone in the theater halfway through the movie. And there's a couple of reasons for that. One, it was one of the first movies ever to have the protagonist, who it looked like the entire movie was built around, die suddenly in the middle of the movie.
yeah.
So if you showed up in the middle of that movie, you had no idea what the hell was going on.
Early, but like it feels like the middle.
It was the middle. Yeah, it was the middle. I mean, she steals money in the beginning of the movie. She goes on the lam. She runs away. She ends up at the Bates Motel. You assume this is going to be the protagonist that survives at the end. And then all of a sudden she's killed in the shower scene.
But that's like a fun fact about movies in general, that back in the day, like movies would just play all day long and people could just walk in at their leisure and watch and then just leave. There was no sitting down at the beginning and watching till the end.
Right.
It was just like, that's why that halfway through thing became a thing.
And then the other thing Hitchcock did was the guy that wrote the novel was Robert Bloch, horror novelist. He told the people he was working with to buy every copy of that book so people did not know how it ended.
Oh, that's amazing.
Because
Like,
he couldn't stop the studio from making the book.
No, the book was out. The book was released. He bought the rights to it. He didn't want anyone to know the ending before they saw the movie, so he bought every copy of it.
I think
But
that's
but the book had been in circulation for a while before he made the movie.
I don't know how long it was out, but I don't know who read it. It was 1960.
yeah. No, but I think that's an amazing thing because you think there's like three different stages of that. There's like the one where it's like, okay, we'll make a movie because no one will have read the book or put the two together, like, and you'll get away with it. Then there's like people might do it, so we can actually stop this by buying all the books. Whereas nowadays, it's like if someone gets a whiff that your thing is based on some other content, there's spoilers.
It's
out
the internet.
next day.
It's
There's
the
like-
internet.
There's no way
So
to keep that
the
on,
last
a lid
great,
on that.
yeah, the last great example of people not having perfect knowledge before they went into a horror movie, Blair Witch Project.
God, that was so good.
I remember
It feels
searching
so
the website.
recent. It feels so modern, but it
the
feels so
website,
far.
yeah, I was freaked the fuck out.
Yeah,
I was
everyone-
on there.
When people went to see that for the first time, myself included, you did not know it was fake. And that was brilliant.
They had created like this entire web of all of this like found data and police reports and things like that before you even saw the movie, you were convinced it had to be real.
It was before IMDb existed, so you couldn't go to the website and be like, oh, this person plays themselves. They're alive.
Snopes didn't come out to the year after.
Right?
It wasn't until like I think the MTV Music Awards or Movie Awards where the actors walked out on stage and everyone's like, holy shit, they're just regular people.
Have you seen that, Lex?
Of course I have.
Okay.
But guess what? I knew it was fake because it was a movie.
Well, you were too young to know that it couldn't.
I just knew it wasn't a documentary.
It felt very documentary.
There's a documentary
Could've
that's scarier. It's about people tickling each other.
That's the third episode in a row that we've talked about that one.
I'm making.
Did you see the Blair Witch 2?
It's
Unfortunately, yes.
garbage.
Book of Shadows.
He has
Loved
like
it.
a drone and stuff.
The worst
so
thing, so
awesome.
my one rule on sequels is you should never shit on the first movie.
Uh-huh.
And Book of Shadows,
What? Wait,
the
wait,
Blair
wait,
Witch
wait,
2.
wait, wait, wait. Gremlins 2 does that a lot.
Does it?
Yeah, they make fun of the rules of the Gremlins of like eating after midnight and everything.
You can make fun of, but so the third Matrix, right? It completely
Undoes.
undoes the first Matrix, which is an amazing movie and everyone loves. You can't do that. And it's not a good movie and it has no right to do that.
I have a very simple rule for sequels, which is the sequel should be able to stand on its own without the first movie.
Yeah.
That's why Terminator 2 is so good.
Best sequel ever, by far, no discussion.
No.
Aliens?
Gremlins 2 is better than Terminator 2.
Speaking of horror movie,
Another
speaking of horror
James
movies,
Cameron?
Aliens is a horror movie.
It is.
Aliens.
Alien is a horror movie.
Yeah.
Alien, sorry,
is
it's
an
an
action
I'd say it's
movie.
an action movie.
Yeah, true.
If I ever made a movie, I want to have like a mob presence that's like vicious, like not related to any religion or any kind of nationality, and I want like this kind of like underground mob element in my film, and I want the mob to be run by David Schwimmer, because I think given the right material, he'd be terrifying.
Wasn't he in Band of Brothers?
He was.
Yeah, but I'm
He was
just saying,
terrifying in that.
I'm just saying if he's quiet and he looks a lot and he waits and he thinks and other people around him do horrible things, he is terrifying. And I just would love to see like an older, like post OJ Simpson, David Schwimmer. And he's got the accent. He's got the voice for it. He can do it. He'd be an amazingly terrifying villain.
Oh, wait. I'm confused. Are you sure you mean David Schwimmer?
Yeah, Ross from Friends.
Fucking Ross from Friends.
Yes.
Why do you think that he's scary?
No.
Yeah, he was just on last week tonight.
Yeah, I know.
And
You trying to murder me?
Not
he
scary.
didn't- not scary.
Not scary
Did
at
not
all.
really scare me. I didn't
Sort of
even-
hapless.
Last week tonight is not scary.
I know that.
Neither's
I'm just
David
saying,
Schwimmer.
Like, neither's David Schwimmer. Yeah.
No, but I'm saying it's a role. Like John Travolta from fucking Grease was a villain in many movies.
Name one of them that was good.
The Punisher.
Face Off.
Oh, I'm so glad you went there because
Sword.
Punisher is a bullshit movie, but I love
It's
it.
really good.
I love. No, it's
It's
not.
as
No,
good. It's as good as the money they spent on it.
It is definitively a bad movie, but man, is it
He was a
fun to
pretty
watch.
good villain in Swordfish.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I'm just saying.
No,
I think.
no.
I
Also-
really.
but
I'm
you-
sorry. I'm
but-
sorry.
but
I'm
you also-
sorry.
But it also showed Halle Berry.
Really think back to that
Oh, wait,
movie.
he's a villain in
that
Pulp
movie
Fiction.
was shit.
He's
No,
a
no,
villain
no.
in Pulp Fiction.
No, Taylor. It gets
He's not really a villain.
He's a hitman.
automatic grade up because you see boobs.
You do see boobs. Well, you see
Halle
Halle Berry's boobs in that.
Not just
right?
boobs.
Halle Berry's
Berry's
boobs.
That's terrifying.
Which
Speaking
is a
of
great
horror,
rhyme.
We were talking about the evolution of horror movies.
Yeah.
Yes.
And one of the things that I wanted to talk about is I think horror movies have evolved with audiences. Audiences have slowly become more numb to certain things.
that's not true. I think what he hit on before is more accurate. I think that what he's saying is that the genre, what they mind, had to evolve to fit the different flavors and generations of audiences. Not that they got numb to being scared. I think people are scared, but what makes them scared changes throughout their lifetimes.
That's kind of exactly what I was saying, though.
So what I'm saying here is that I think forget it.
Eh.
No, it's like because like The Exorcist was extremely terrifying to people, It had people passing out in the theater. And
Why do you think it
people-
was scary though?
Well, because they were afraid it was. We talked about this last episode.
Religion.
Yeah, it was
Ooh,
religion.
religion is scary.
Religion's terrifying.
Yep.
To people.
Have you seen Midsommar?
Yeah.
Not yet.
No,
Is
but
that
I
religion?
Not religion. It's like cult sort of
So,
thinking.
but I watched.
But that's another movie where that's where horror breaks down for me.
Oh my God! Can we talk about Heredity?
Oh, yes. Let's.
Hereditary? Is it Hereditary?
Hereditary.
Hereditary.
Oh my God! It's the best horror movie. That actually might. It might not be better than It Follows in my mind, but it's fucking up there.
Yeah. So
Like I can watch It Follows over and over again and
just-
still not get sick of it, but I can watch Heredity once and it's good for a
That
lifetime.
one scene in Hereditary, it stunned me.
which,
It like
which scene?
the car ride.
Yeah. So that's what the I forgot the director's name that made those movies. The guy that made Midsommar. The family tragedy, the like death in a family scenes that he paints in both movies, absolutely the most like chilling scenes of the movies.
Human.
Yeah.
Human,
The
terrifyingly
beginning of Midsommar
real.
when she finds out her family is all dead and she like wails, and it is absolutely just blood curdling.
Yeah, it's unnerving.
Yeah.
And that's one of that's a really great. Okay, so now we get into like modern age horror movies, and I think that might be a theme that we see more, certainly in the movies that I appreciate, is the idea that it's something that it's like real human emotion, real something that gives you angst and anxiety while you're watching.
Yeah, I think. Well, that's what made The Exorcist. I mean, this is back in the 70s, but what made The Exorcist work so well as a horror movie is every parent has a like natural fear of having their kid, in this case their daughter, have some sort of unknown sickness that they can't understand. And that's what The Exorcist was. It was Ellen Burstyn and Linda Blair's her daughter, and she can't figure out what's wrong with her. And ultimately it becomes a devil possession movie. And those, obviously that's great, just pure horror. But like at the core of the movie, it's just a mom that doesn't know what's wrong with her daughter. That's frightening.
That's so interesting to me.
That's a really good point,
Because
actually.
someone who dissected my favorite movie, we'll talk about it again, Ghostbusters, was piggybacking on The Exorcist, among other movies. They had realized that religion was the popular motivator of the time, like how we talked about nuclear war and the Cold War.
Yep.
They said that religion became the primal fear in a lot of horror movies, where it's demons and Catholicism and popular religions and pseudo religions, even Poltergeist, use like Native American religion and tribal religions to evoke fear, because people started to give credence to anything that is documented as a religion or as a myth. And look at what they fought in Ghostbusters was Babylonian Sumerian myth.
Yeah, which is so fucking like
They-
prescient.
They did it because they realized that the horror movies of the time were done talking about crazy people. They didn't want to have the Ghostbusters fight like a psychopath. That the Ghostbusters could fight, Anthony Perkins from Psycho. That'd be over.
So it's funny because it came out the same year Nightmare on Elm Street came out.
Yeah, exactly.
84.
They were talking about that kind of stuff, like this kind of other layer to horror, as in like this religious layer, this shared belief layer, which is what the Gozerian culture was. Gozer worshippers, that's what they were fighting, and they were fighting it with technology. And some people say that the whole premise of Ghostbusters is because like people say Ghostbusters is a movie, it's not about anything, and I contend that it's a movie about science over religion.
Yeah, it's the evolution of kind of the narrative going from like man versus the world, man versus like the spiritual versus man versus nature. Like we could use nature or science in this instance to overcome the supernatural, which I think is really a cool way to look
That's
at it.
why I
But I
wanted to be a
wouldn't really-
scientist.
Yeah.
Really wouldn't say
Yeah, me too.
Ghostbusters is like a horror movie. It's not-
No, what I'm saying is that what they did is
But
they
nor would I say it's a parody of horror movies.
It's not.
It's something entirely different.
What I think
Agreed.
I think it was showing respect to horror movies and seeing where we were as a culture at that time, right? That movie, if you released it, same actor, same dialogue, same script today, would not work. It worked because it was at the right place at the right time, and they cared about where horror was, and they did research on it. And that's why they changed their script. Their script was really supposed to be like a demon that like traveled multiple dimensions and was like a skinny, thin man. They put the religious undertones on it because they wanted it to be in line with horror movies
Well,
of the day.
look at the new version of Ghostbusters. Did not work
Not at all.
for many reasons, but one of them being it did not have that same sort of like capturing of the zeitgeist of the time, right?
No,
Right.
no, it wasn't. It was
Also, I think that there's never a chance in the new Ghostbusters for me to ever have been afraid. But there is that sense when, especially like they're in jail and they're talking about like the potential end of the world. They're like talking about how the building was made with all these weird components
Yep.
and that this guy is like a certified wacko or a genius. And you kind of get this sense of like, maybe this doesn't work out well for these guys. Like maybe it is a
well, you know what it is?
scary
'Cause
thing that I'm looking at right now.
everything up until the building collapses is human fault. Like they're saying this is a guy who performed unnecessary surgery. He had a temple of people that were worshiping him, and they built this weird building. That doesn't mean that he's gonna get what he wants. But now this is happening, and it's like, what do regular men do when the stakes have been elevated? And I don't think that comes up as a theme anymore. Like, what's man's place in a supernatural world? And you see that a lot on the show Supernatural, which I like a lot. But horror movies, normally it's like we're at the whim of them.
Yeah.
They don't ever take control of the narrative like they do in Ghostbusters.
So don't forget to like 1984, that movie was nominated for Oscars for visual effects.
Yeah.
Like, that's how new. You watch it now and you're like, oh, I could tell it's CGI and
Yeah, but you know what?
they're layering
That movie,
scenes
really, if
together.
you look at what stood the test of time, it's the editing and the script.
Yep. So going back to Terminator for a second.
Ooh.
If you watch the original Halloween, right? 1978, Terminator came out in early 80s. It's the same villain. It is a emotionless, unstoppable force going after a female. That's the movie.
Yeah, but they
Both
put on
movies.
the technological aspect of it.
Yeah, they put a sci-fi spin on it, but it is, if you watch both movies, it's the same movie.
Come with me if you want to live.
That's
that's the second one.
Halloween
Well,
doesn't have
that's
that.
the one thing I think people are like, oh, we don't know why Terminator 2 is the only one that worked. It's like, because there's no Kyle Reese. Kyle Reese is the best part of Terminator 1. And people do not give him any credit.
What? Of course.
No, they don't. He does. He's not Terminator 2. He's not Terminator 3. He's in Salvation as a kid. It's like ridiculous. Kyle Reese is what made that movie work.
Well, but that in your implication here is you're saying that Terminator 2 didn't work.
I think Terminator 1 is a better movie. I find it more enjoyable. But they do a good job of the supplanting the Terminator, the Kyle Reese role with the Terminator is very fun for me.
Yeah.
But I think that only has so much legs because
So-
Kyle Reese is a character and the Terminator is not a character.
So one of my favorite things about the history of those two movies, which I mean, I think we can shoehorn into horror. And
it is horror. Terminator 1 is horror for sure.
Terminator 1 definitely is.
Agreed.
It's hard.
But you get the James Cameron spin on the sequel where it's suddenly like, it's horror. It's more actiony.
It's more.
But the thing that I love about the whole thing is that Arnie was obviously the antagonist of the first movie, and they tried so hard. And again, going back to the way that it's like Psycho buying up all the books, they tried so hard to keep a lid on the idea that Arnie came back in the second one as the good guy, to the point where people were in the theaters watching this thing and they're just like, oh my God, he's not the bad guy in this movie.
They kept
and
that
that's
secret?
huge.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's a huge
I
secret.
was-
Apparently
always on
his idea
VHS.
too.
Yeah. Who? Wait, who's
Arnold's idea.
He's a very
Really?
smart
He
man.
refused to be a bad guy anymore.
Wow.
He's a really smart guy, by the way, Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Well, he's
He was a
Governor?
governor.
Governor,
Yeah, but even beyond that, he was like really fucking smart in his own country. Apparently, he's like a mathematician. And he's like,
no. I think you're thinking of
Dolph Lundgren?
Dolph Lundgren.
Yeah, you're right,
He
yeah.
was a chemist.
Arnold was in the army, and he did bodybuilding competitions.
lol.
Yeah. Hercules in Manhattan was one of those movies.
No, I watched Total Recall last night. It was great.
Total Recall, fantastic movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what I was saying,
Horrific too. That's a scary movie.
what I was saying before is that horror movies evolved with audiences in a way that they had to use things that audiences were familiar with to make them scary for them. So take Ring for an example. They used like an everyday item that made sense for families, like VHS, and it made it scary.
Yeah.
But that it doesn't work when you watch it in 2015 or 2016 because it's a VHS.
Yeah, we don't have VHS anymore.
Same thing for older horror movies, where like a cell phone would fix all of your problems.
I hate that.
Like, Scream, if people had cell phones,
Actually, it's funny.
Like to communicate.
So obviously, I'd say that like certainly, if not the golden era, but certainly a golden era of horror movies in general was the 1980s, and maybe that's why we are so like. You look at Stranger Things, which if it's not like a horror show particularly, it's definitely horror genre inspired.
very,
homage.
very tense scenes.
Yeah, lots of these kinds of things, but it is the perfect time chronologically where it's like very much the same world that we live in now, but distinct in the sense that they didn't have cell phones. They, you had this sense of kind of like being out on your own and not in a world that
You're disconnected enough.
where horror works well.
But yeah, this is where you talk about the evolution of horror. You think of some of the new movies that came out, good or bad. I don't know if you saw Unfriended. It's like people who are having a FaceTime conversation. The whole movie takes place in the world of the computer, and all of a sudden an entity comes on and is part of the conversation and starts offing the people one by one. So you're like using technology, or this new movie coming out, I forget what it's called.
Wait, why don't you turn off the computer?
They're like warned that they're not able to, otherwise you'll be killed.
You'll be killed if you're on it. So what does it matter?
All right, fine, fair enough. But then there's this new movie coming out with the Countdown app, where it tells you exactly when you'll die. So but it's exactly that thing. They're now attacking horror from, well, it's not scary anymore if I can communicate freely. So what if your cell phone is the source of the horror?
Ooh, that's interesting.
Well, here's an interesting thing is that I think that like going back to why they didn't use these horror things previously is that a lot of the people who were writing it weren't part of that generation that was coming out right now. Like they were older writers who were still used to a world before cell phones. Because think about that technological curve that happened there.
Let's talk about Gremlins 2, where everyone's in a building that has everything they need.
Yeah. And
Gremlins 2 really screwed you up, huh?
Yeah.
And then the next step is that here we have all these horror movies like the one you just described, which are basically people saying like fear mongering about new technologies.
Don't they
which
have cell phones in the Purge series? They had cell phones, right?
Yeah, I assume so.
They do.
Yeah.
Well, the premise of the Purge, it didn't matter if you had a cell phone or not. It's just like
Right,
it's just
so
a lawless day.
Right. You either deem cell phones useless or you make them the source of the horror.
But my point basically is that I just think that there is this idea that we're trying to find how to put new technology into current horror, and it's kind of complicated because if you do it in a weird way, like I remember like Forgetting Sarah Marshall. You guys seen the movie?
One of my favorite comedies.
It's an incredible movie. But the thing where it's just like she's on the movie where like the cell phone like that's trying to kill you, like, and it's like, why don't you take the battery out? It's like horror in this new world that we live in with all this new technology has a real risky chance of seeming stupid like a year from now. Or we're just like, well, why don't you turn Facebook off?
Oh, it's not evergreen.
Yeah, it's based on this sort of transient technology, which changes every year after a year.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's, to me, when horror breaks new ground, is like when it's things you have not seen before. Right? So we talked about Halloween, 1978. It created the slasher movie. It got ripped off from pretty much 1980 to 1984. And then Wes Craven came out with Nightmare on Elm Street. And it was like, well, sure, maybe it's not that scary to have a random guy stalk people. What if that stalker is in your dreams? How do you stop that?
It's a demon in your dreams.
In your dreams.
That's where that movie works so well because that's so relevant to real people. That's something that
we all gotta sleep.
You can't stop that. You can't stop something like that.
Agreed.
That's why religion-based horror movies always work. Like something that everybody's afraid of the devil, getting possessed.
Yeah, but I'm not because I'm not religious.
I know, but like
but most of the people who don't live in New York City,
right? I know
like
exactly.
The average audience is not gonna.
But to me, where The Ring,
the
was
audience
really scary.
in the Bible Belt is not like the movie Eli on Netflix. It's a religious movie, and it's a twisted religious movie. You don't realize it's religious, which is kind of neat, and it works. And I can
with
see
a title like Eli, and you didn't catch that it was a fucking religious movie.
But although I was rooting for the devil by the end, so
scariest Eli in the last 10 years was Manning. Let's be honest.
That's our one sports comment.
First three quarter Eli was scary as fuck. Fourth quarter Eli is a different person.
But so for me, The Ring, where the scariest part of The Ring was what was new was the idea that the creature could crawl out of a screen. Like that moment when that happens, that was something I'd never seen
because
before.
we had TVs like that. They would go.
That's not true. Gremlins
freak
did it
me
in
out.
Gremlins 2. They came out of the screen to fight John Wayne.
back
Yes.
to Gremlins 2.
I was like talking about Gremlins 2.
So what I miss about horror movies, right? You go back to the 80s. What I think made the 80s great, Taylor said a good point that it was like you had an environment of fear. You didn't have an easy way out. You didn't have cell phones. The other thing that was great, practical effects. And I miss that in horror movies today. You have, if you watch The Walking Dead, and I'm a fan of The Walking Dead and I'm loyal to it and whatever, it's in the 20th season, but the CGI blood just absolutely kills me and takes me out of every single kill.
You can see it?
Absolutely. It's not
It doesn't
natural.
move the right
It's
way.
not natural. It feels weird. Like they stab someone in the head and it's clearly a CGI stabbing.
Yeah.
Go back to like, this is what made Friday the 13th great. It was Tom Savini doing prosthetics.
Ooh.
Kevin Bacon with like the arrow or the knife through the neck in the first Friday the 13th.
The Thing.
That's amazing. And you were like, it was like watching magic on the screen. It was watching magicians do things. You're like, how did they do that? I have no idea.
Now it's like computers.
Just stabbed in the head by the scream goes.
Well, that's like.
Did he move?
Yeah, I keep thinking he does. So to practical effects things, but what you chimed in there, and I got to jump on that, is The Thing, which is
Yeah.
probably the greatest practical effects horror movie of all time.
Absolutely.
I mean, am I wrong? Like, is there a
The
better
scene where they
example
reach
of
through
like,
the chest.
Oh my God. What is it called?
Yeah, when he's doing
What are they
the
called?
Defibrillator.
Defibrillator.
Defibrillators,
yeah,
thank you.
right
Too many
through,
syllables
and
for
he
this time of
spins the
night.
arms off.
That was the most shocking scene of the movie. But you're right. Like that movie, there's John Carpenter and
Yeah,
perfect. Yeah.
just absolutely perfect.
Well, that's like speaking of like modern movies, like the new It series. The new It was amazing. They had a healthy supply of practical effects, things that were subtle but still very scary. And then the big overblown stuff happened, but it wasn't just so much out there. Like it was well done. But it too kind of started to fall apart in my opinion because it relied heavily on CGI.
takes you out of the movie.
Yeah,
right away.
it was stuff that was so over the top. It was not scary in any way.
And that there is a dividing line between the two, where if you like really over the top effects, when that's CGI, that obviously that's CGI. But when they start doing kind of like practical things, like they CGI balloon or something, you're just like,
Doesn't feel right.
yeah, but why? Why'd you fucking do that? Just fucking use a balloon.
I watch Jurassic Park, right? That was, I don't know, how many years ago was that? 26 years ago?
Something like that. 94?
The CGI
93?
in that movie holds up because it was not like they used it sparingly.
Right.
They mixed it with practical effects.
Yeah, but here's my question. Fincher uses practical effects and CGI all the time.
Who?
He's
David Fincher?
David Fincher uses CGI where he'll have a CGI teapot because the camera's gonna fly through it. He'll have like CGI snow or CGI roads. He'll do whole CGI scenes and you never notice it. And what is he doing differently?
He's not CGIing the main part of the
Yeah, exactly.
scene.
It's not the
difference.
focus.
No, but sometimes
It's-
it's full scenes that are all CGI and you have no clue. Like in Fight Club, the IKEA scene or like the scene where his oven blows up. It's the whole scene is CGI.
But the whole thing in so for like the IKEA what do you mean like IKEA like
no,
seeing things
sorry,
going-
not the IKEA scene. The Fight Club scene with the stovetop when it explodes. The entire apartment is CGI.
But
Right.
I knew Mark Zuckerberg was CGI in Social Network.
Yeah,
That was
the whole
very
thing
old.
was just- and actually, weirdly enough, he is CGI in real life. So that's
just
very
to
true
give you
to
like
form.
to kind of tag tail off of Rob's example, like CGI blood. Little do you know, but you actually know what blood should look like and what it should act like
Right.
in real life. That's why it's really hard to create on screen. Now, when you see a CGI shark, I mean, most sharks look the same to you. We can't really
Yeah,
differentiate.
but in
between
Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, David Fincher put CGI blood in all of his characters. He didn't use no real blood in any of the movie. And no one says that movie's full of CGI.
Yeah, but no one talks about that movie at all. to be
But
honest.
I'm
So,
not saying that
fair.
CGI
Yeah.
blood can't be done well. But what I'm saying is when things are CGI that the human brain typically doesn't pay that much attention to,
Right.
it can get away with it. That's why human faces are the hardest thing to do because that's
Yeah.
what we're best at recognizing.
And that's an incredible point because going back to what you're talking about with like the explosion and things like that is no one none of us, not most human beings, have an experience of what it's like to be in a slow motion explosion. So
Of an apartment, you're right.
right. So we don't know that what we're looking at looks very artificial.
Yeah, but when I hang out my pet Velociraptor, I think Jurassic Park looks fake as fuck.
But you know, the thing is,
How is Timothy, by the way?
Oh, he's
but
dead.
this is the thing.
It's his birthday next week.
Most people don't know that like Forrest Gump won multiple awards for visual effects. There's tons of visual effects
Great
shots
CGI.
in
Great.
Forrest Gump.
Great
Now-
director.
Now, in the modern,
I don't even know where's their CGI. That's that good. I can't.
there's a ton.
Gary
There is
Sinise's
a-
legs.
Oh yeah.
the-
JFK saying
all the football
Okay.
scenes.
Okay. Now
Them in
it seems
the
stupid.
Washington
of course,
Monument.
a
You're
ton
right,
of
you're
CGI.
right.
It won, I think it
anyways.
won the award for best visual effects.
So, and you know, the first Jurassic Park did a great job balancing practical and visual effects when they were needed and not. They built giant animatronic dinosaurs. They built practical velociraptors, which gave our brains a good reference for what this should look like in real life. So when you watch the modern Jurassic World movies, it doesn't look similar to what we saw that was real. That's why it kind of throws you off a little bit.
And,
That's why
and the other
Gremlins 2 is best because they had puppets.
the other overlooked thing that Spielberg did, the biggest CGI set piece of that movie is the T-Rex attack scene. Rain the entire time. So it blurs your vision
Yeah.
of the imperfection of CGI.
And also,
Yeah, but the problem with
editing-
that, he did that to blur the CGI, but it made the animatronics so heavy that they had to be reset every 45
It's a
minutes.
it's a different problem.
But he's also very well versed in dealing with shitty animatronics coming from Jaws,
Oh, that's true.
where basically it never worked.
Well, the actual
Bruce.
T-Rex scene, they actually have
It's a great
they have a CG T-Rex, and because of what they were doing, there's certain things like in CG that they didn't have to do because of that scene. They would have threw it off in real life. If they were doing it during the daylight, that scene would have never worked. It would have never worked. They didn't have the technology to pull that off. But because they chose the right time, the right weather, everything, they could fool your brain. And they were really good at editing in the real T-Rex with the CG T-Rex, like actually cutting and crossing where it made you really buy into it.
Is that one of the best movies of all time?
Jurassic Park?
Yeah.
Yes. For me, the fundamental problem is they used to use CGI to fill in the gaps of what they were not able to do with practical effects. They would think first practical effects, and if I can't do stuff, fine, let's go to CGI and how do we cover it up, right? Terminator 2, great example. It was before Jurassic Park. How do we make a liquid metal villain? I don't know. Okay, great, CGI, done. Everything else, practical. And now it's, how do I use practical effects for everything? And this is, if we get into Star Wars, this is why I hate every prequel of Star Wars, because they defaulted to CGI for every single thing in the movie.
Right.
And it ruined it.
But you don't enjoy the story
And
of
that-
any of the other ones? Any of the new
I
ones?
can't even get into the story. I don't even know what the story is because I'm so taken out of it.
But that's the thing, like, you know, with horror, like there's a lot of things that it's a balancing act. It's a like not revealing what's behind the door at the right moment and versus just showing it early.
It's almost like making a film was really difficult.
Yeah, it's
know?
really.
I thought
you
it was,
had to show dedication and really care about your
I
craft.
thought, I thought I could just say, this is what we're going to do. Put it on the screen. Like it. It's hard. It's really fucking hard. The more tools you have, the more complicated your decisions are.
Yep. I think horror is its own, it's such a unique genre because every other genre of film, the first thing producers think about is who's the lead in the movie, right? And I'm struggling with this personally right now because I wrote a comedy and the only way I found out my comedy is ever going to be made is if someone is attached to the movie who is a big name. But horror is the one thing where you can have a $2 million budget, no actors that you can name in the movie, and it can make $250 million.
but it's better when you don't know them.
But you know what? You know what I think is
you're right, because it keeps you in the movie, right?
But you know what I think is really interesting? Horror, its whole lifespan, has always been the counterculture. If superhero movies and blockbuster filmmaking and big hits are the order of the day, horror has always been, even if it's not consistent with itself, has always been the counterculture. It's always been the subculture. It's taking what else is happening around it and then using that as its storytelling. And that's really interesting.
Fuck, that's good. That's really true. I mean,
I have a good idea every fucking 45 minutes.
So going back to one of the originals, Night of the Living Dead. Night of the Living Dead is a social commentary about race and things like that. Like, here is an opportunity to show a black protagonist with a white female protagonist and kind of like a situation that you could not show them probably in normal film. But because it's horror, it's totally okay.
Yeah, but I'm saying is that even beyond that, like it's in plot point, there's still a subculture. They're doing things that are more realistic. You know, when people are sleeping in separate beds after they're married in movies, horror movies have people sleeping in beds together. You know, when people in the Midwest are kind and friendly,
how is it different than what I said?
what I'm saying is that when people in the Midwest are kind and friendly in your films, right? Like if like my cousin Vinny, where like they're like bumpkins, but they're very friendly and they're very good willing. It's like you have Texas Chainsaw Massacre. You know, you're able to talk about things you can't talk about.
But why is that so?
It is exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
I'm not
It's the
saying
same thing.
It's not a counterpoint. It's a point. It's an exact. It's what I'm saying is that horror film. It's been largely consistent with itself, and it changes with the market.
I think that it's like an outcrop of the changing times. So
It
like
is,
We
it
use
is.
we use it to blow off steam almost. We create horror as the necessary way of addressing what we find horrifying.
It's therapeutic.
in
Well,
our
then
society.
look at Peel. He does a great job at that.
But look at all the films.
One time.
No, but look at all the films that they're doing right now, where all the themes
Us
are like
and,
superheroes, like Chronicle and Brightburn, where the theme of the fear is the Superman.
Horrifying, by the way. I've always thought that Superman was scary, though.
I feel like global warming is scarier than Superman. So
Well, there's no Supermans, but there really is fucking
global warming is
so.
terrifying. It's great. I get to live till I'm 52. Great. Phenomenal.
Well, I think that about wraps horror.
Ed, do we have closing thoughts?
Closing thoughts is that when there's a superhero blockbuster in the theater and I won't see anything else, I'll still go see a horror movie. I saw Pet Sematary when
They're not
everything was-
competing. The Netflix and Hulu budget. This is my closing thought. The Netflix, Hulu, Amazon Prime secondary budget that people think is a threat, people think is a bullshit hand because it's not getting released in major theaters. That's a saving grace to horror. Because horror films that got released on $25 million budgets didn't very rarely win anywhere. We all want to talk about the success stories, but not everyone was a success story. What I'm saying is there's a secondary market to get your film out there to audiences, to gain traction, right? Didn't used to happen. Nowadays, even since 95, if your movie didn't do well its first 2 weeks of the year of its release, it didn't do well. And guess what? You have a saving grace. This streaming a secondary audience is going to save the horror genre, if not propagate it more. You don't need to be a blockbuster to be a horror genre. And I think that the horror genre and the superhero genre are going to compete. But I think what's going to happen is that IMAX films and movie theaters are going to become event filmmaking where you go maybe 1 to 4 times a year and you're on Netflix all year round.
Well, that's kind of to your point. Is I'm starting to, maybe it's just my Netflix algorithm for me, but I see a lot of horror movies, just like new ones popping up, and a lot less like feel good movies.
This is
that are
the
just
advent.
random,
This
you know?
is the advent of horror. I'm
Yeah.
telling you, man. This is where they get treated like the big leagues. And critics need to stop thinking about movies being shown in theaters as it being worth talking about.
Well, I think for me, horror will forever be about the experience, right? And that's why I actually think it will be evergreen in theaters because people, more than any other genre, want to get scared together for whatever reason it is.
Yes.
There's something exciting about being in a theater and hearing other people scream. I don't need to laugh with other people. I don't need to cry with other people, but I want to get scared with other people. And that's why for me, horror will always be a theater experience.
What's like watching a horror movie? You like to theme while you're watching a horror movie. Like
Yeah.
if I like to watch horror movies at night.
He prefers a 10-course meal with drinks.
Right. Yeah.
So here's two things that I'd like separate concepts, which I'll try to conflate together here to close up. One is there is an absolutely primal fear. Fear is a primal emotion that I think that makes horror such a, have such
Compelling genre.
longevity. Yeah, have be that compelling. And I don't think that we'll ever get past that. There's no point in our future that I imagine us just getting beyond fear and surviving. Like, fear is part of the reason why we exist. And then the other half of it is the reception of these movies, which I'd say historically has been something that, like, so Kurt Vonnegut used to say that he was always upset the fact that all of his books were being interpreted as being science fiction, especially since every critic likes to use the science fiction shelf as the urinal, basically saying that, like, no one respects science fiction, so why would I want to be a science fiction writer? And that has been true certainly of horror movies historically. You know, there might be examples like Hitchcock or other people who have these movies, these films being respected as true, you know, avant-garde, amazing things. But by and large, it is put on the wayside, like not at all appreciated for what they are. And I'm not sure if that'll ever change. I'd like to think that it would, but maybe that's part of that, like you said, the fringe genre,
the subculture, yeah.
the subculture of being horror. Like horror, what scares us always has to be something that subverts us. And maybe that's what's necessary.
It's a
for
tough pill to swallow. Horror and
exist.
comedy have it hardest because they have to move out with the Joneses.
Yeah, neither one gets nominated for Best Picture very often.
Yeah,
right?
but they have to be the head of the group.
Yeah.
Drama, where it's dry and old, that's the thing that gets familiar.
Yeah, but you know what? To be honest, drama's moving forward with really interesting cinematography, really interesting editing. You're not seeing it very often, but you're seeing it in television. Like you look at Sherlock.
Yeah, true.
Sherlock on television has the most interesting
so
editing.
good.
They're not making Good Will Hunting anymore and releasing it to theaters.
Or they're
That's
not
going
making
to Netflix.
Yeah, but they're not making Field of Dreams either.
Yep.
And Field of Dreams is everything. You know, like that's like the apex of filmmaking. But guess what? Comedy, I feel like, is the one. Comedy is the punching bag, not horror.
Don't say it. Don't
Not
say
horror.
it.
Comedy's the one that needs to
I'm
adapt.
trying to make a comedy.
I understand, but comedy's the one that needs to adapt. Comedy is lazy.
Not mine.
No one saw Tag. No one saw Tag. 20 years ago, Tag would be the biggest film of the year. No one saw it.
The problem has been, I mean, you know, we can do
American
this for-
comedy. No, we'll talk about this off air. Forget it. Good night, everybody.
Next episode.
Good night, everybody.
As always, guys, we are the Recipe Boys. You can find us on Twitter and Instagram. Follow us at the Recipe Boys, boys being spelled Boyz. And Rob, thank you so much for being on the show.
Rob, thank you.
Happy to be here.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for the food. Thank you for the booze. As always, guys, make yourself
Booze being spelled Boos.
Z.
Yeah, right.
And Rob's being spelled ROBZ.
Z.
Yeah. Well,
the Z.
everyone, make yourself a drink, and cheers to you for listening.
Cheers to you for listening.
Salute.
Thank you.
Cheers
guys.
friends.
Come pie.
Let's make another drink.